Fans had been noticing something was off for years. The attractive actor from Logan's run in Cabaret had a different appearance. His eyes were encircled by dark rings. His face shifted. His voice became feeble. Initially, doctors diagnosed it as cancer. They were mistaken. Michael York came clean at the age of 83. His body was being destroyed by an uncommon disease. He sold his lovely house of 45 years. He relocated close to Mayo Clinic. He is currently dealing with the hardest catastrophe of his life after a prosperous career. Amidst the turmoil of World War II, he was born in a peaceful English village. Michael Hugh Johnson was his name. And he stood between two worlds even as a little youngster. His mother was a talented musician, and his father was a hardy Welsh officer in the Royal Artillery. He was formed from the beginning by that combination of inventiveness and discipline. He had two twins and an elder sister, but one of the twins passed away a few hours after delivery. The family was affected by tragedy and a spirit of adventure at a young age. Michael injured his nose when he tried to fly when he was 3 years old by jumping off a coal house. Although it seems irresponsible, it also conveys the extent to which he would go in order to experience something genuine. His world was safe when he was growing up in Sussex, but he had a deep-seated need for more. He joined the National Youth Theatre at the age of 17. His break came then. He transitioned from subdued school productions to the gritty East London stages. The theatre was bustling, but the streets were tougher. He ended up performing in Julius Caesar by Shakespeare while touring Italy, putting on shows in historic towns and learning how to make a scene in settings where the language was different. He gained tenacity from the experience in addition to acting skills. His polished voice and blue eyes weren't what set him apart. The manner he poured himself into the work was the reason. Attention was sought by other young actors. He pursued the craft. He became adept at using his breath, voice, and body. He carried that discipline with him. Even in those days, every step he took seemed to be a part of a larger adventure. He then proceeded to Oxford. He immersed himself in theatre during breaks, while the majority of students partied or unwinded. He performed in classical productions, read plays, and practiced with the youth theatre over the summers. He worked non-stop, alternating between Shakespearean classics and experimental plays. He had range from that blend. He wasn't confined. He was capable of handling both contemporary dialogue and verse that was centuries old. Critics began to take notice of him. Enough to continue, but not the big ones. He chose not to pursue the glitz after graduating from college in 1964. He proceeded directly to Scotland's Dundee Repertory Theatre. It wasn't ostentatious, but it was genuine. You had to perform a variety of roles every week, memorize your lines quickly, and deal with hostile audiences. That's where his acting career truly took off. He began establishing a reputation after changing his name to Michael York. He demonstrated how far he was prepared to go with a part in the tense and contentious play The Hostage. He lived what he said, not simply what he spoke. Then something took place. That made all the difference. York was approached to join the National Theatre Company by none other than Laurence Olivier. A legend was Olivier. He was never within a mile of most actors. York began working with giants barely a few months after finishing school. He didn't care that he didn't get lead parts. He absorbed everything, watched, listened, and took on minor tasks. The best taught him how to keep the stage going and make a speech less loud than quiet. He appeared in classics, historical dramas, and Shakespeare plays. He portrayed a nobleman, a soldier, and a watchman. And he made an impression in every capacity, no matter how minor. He was grabbing a cup of tea in the cafeteria one afternoon while the old Vic was on break. Already watching him, director Franco Zeffirelli approached him and inquired if he would be interested in doing movies. Things may change that quickly. You could be adding milk to your tea 1 minute and then on your way to stardom the next. In actuality, though, it wasn't luck. He reached that point after years of silent, arduous labor, risks, setbacks, and decisions. Zeffirelli took action in 1967, 2 years later. York was chosen to play Lucentio in the high-profile Shakespearean drama The Taming of the Shrew, which starred Elizabeth Taylor and Richard Burton. It was York's first motion picture. He was only 25. The pressure would have caused most young actors to collapse. Two of Hollywood's most well-known and notoriously volatile stars are present, and millions of dollars are on the line. York, however, remained firm. He picked up the pace of film acting fast, fusing physical humor with traditional lines. The outcome? He was adored by audiences. His sincerity and on-screen persona were even commended by critics. Queen Elizabeth II was present at the movie's royal premiere in London. Michael York was no longer merely a theater performer after that. He appeared on the map. Television also knocked while that movie debuted theaters. In the same year, he was cast in the BBC program The Forsyte Saga, which was about a wealthy British family. York portrayed Jolly, a youthful, impressionable person enmeshed in a proud and traditional society. It was a huge series. Large sets, exquisite costumes, and 26 episodes. Few people initially noticed it. Most houses did not have access to BBC Two. However, it was a cultural explosion when it was broadcast again on BBC One in 1968. More than 18 million viewers saw the last episode. The Soviet Union even purchased the rights. It was the BBC's very first worldwide television success. York was at the heart of it all. Everywhere was his face, which was now familiar from both displays. However, 1968 was his most significant year. He returned to play Tybalt in Romeo and Juliet thanks to Zeffirelli. For a Shakespeare movie, the $850,000 budget was a significant sum. It was a dangerous production. For the first time, Zeffirelli used actual teenagers for the main parts. Olivia Hussey was 16 years old. Leonard Whiting was 17 years old. York, who was a little older at 25, gave Tybalt, Juliet's violent, vindictive cousin, more passion and fury. He was living the lines, not just reading them. Tybalt's battles with Mercutio and Romeo seemed intense, quick, and frightful. His red cape gained notoriety. The film burst with emotion as his parts brimmed with intensity. Everything changed because of the movie. With a global box office total of around $39 million, Romeo and Juliet became the highest-grossing Shakespearean picture ever. Today, that amounts to over $300 million. It was nominated for Best Picture and took home 2 Oscars. Teenagers genuinely wanted to see the Shakespearean movie, and it developed into much more. Young audiences felt a strong connection. They saw themselves experiencing sadness, anger, and love on TV. Tybalt in York was more than just a bad guy. He was an actual guy, motivated by anger and pride. Critics listened. He was suddenly more than promising. He was indispensable. York transformed from a stage rookie to a global celebrity in just 3 years. One element connected it all. Franco Zeffirelli, the audacious and unexpected director, had noticed something that others had overlooked. He allowed York to develop, learn, and shine. While most young performers were playing it safe between 1969 and 1971, Michael York was already breaking the norms. He wasn't looking for romantic leads or heroic roles. In contrast, he was choosing characters who were odd, sinister, or difficult to like. York, in The Guru, 1969, was just 27. He portrayed a British rock singer who was seeking enlightenment and was traveling to India. However, this was hardly a peaceful, romantic journey. His personality was conceited, self-centered, and unclear about whether he genuinely cared about spirituality or was merely acting that way. The Beatles' journey to India made news, and everyone was interested in anything Eastern around the time the movie was released. Legendary Indian actor Utpal Dutt co-starred in the on-location film as the sitar maestro who had to instruct this naive foreigner. There was more to their scenes together than just music. They were a moral conflict. Ego versus tradition. East versus West. York played it with calm uncertainty, never really grasping the world he was wandering through, which made his portrayal seem real. It was more honest because of that. Then it happened. 1970s something for everyone. York didn't hold back at all this time. At the age of 28, he portrayed Conrad Ludwig, a charming but heartless vagrant who entices men and women to join a wealthy Austrian family. He was not a romantic. He lacked nobility. He was gorgeous, cunning, and dangerous. Whoever offered him authority, he slept with. To obtain what he desired, he killed. Like tools, he used people. The countess he manipulated was portrayed by Angela Lansbury, who was already a Hollywood legend. Together, their scenes resembled a game of chess. He is constantly 3 steps ahead. He is asked, "You can sleep with anyone, can't you?" at one point in the movie. York's character stares back and says, "If I have to, but I have my preferences." That one line summed up the whole character. It was rare and bold in 1970 to play a bisexual character without apology. But York didn't just play it, he owned it. The film drew comparisons to the talented Mr. Ripley for good reason. It was just as twisted and just as brilliant. By 1971, York had moved into the world of war thrillers with Zeppelin. This time, he wasn't a killer or a lost soul. He was a man caught between two countries. He played Geoffrey Richter Douglas, a Scottish officer with a German mother. Because of this mixed background, he was perfect for a secret mission. During World War I, when Germany's Zeppelin attacks terrified British cities, York's character was asked by British intelligence to pretend to defect to the enemy. He wasn't a real traitor, but had to act like one. It was a dangerous, double-edged plan. He boarded a massive German airship as a spy, knowing one mistake could cost him his life. The film built tension slowly, with scenes full of silence, suspicion, and tight spaces inside the floating death machine. York didn't play the character as a brave hero. He played him as a human being, unsure of who he really was, pulled between loyalty and blood. That made it even more gripping. In early 1972, Michael York stepped into a role that would change everything for him. He played Brian Roberts in Cabaret, a quiet British academic who finds himself pulled into the wild energy of 1930s Berlin. But this wasn't just another musical. Directed by Bob Fosse and starring Liza Minnelli, the film broke taboos. York's character was bisexual, something almost never shown in Hollywood at the time. The film earned over $42 million, and York's performance stood out not just because of what he said, but because of what he didn't. He used subtle looks and small gestures to say everything about desire, confusion, and heartbreak. In one unforgettable scene, York's character dances with both Sally and the Baron. And without a single word, it becomes clear that he's falling for the man more than the woman. Behind the scenes, people warned him not to take the part. It's too risky, they said. But York never saw it that way. To him, playing someone different wasn't dangerous. It was human. And something else happened during that film. York and Liza Minnelli became friends, real friends. They met as two young actors thrown into the chaos of a demanding set. Fosse was a perfectionist, and filming in Berlin was no holiday. But through long days and tougher nights, they clicked. York was 30. Minnelli was 25, and Cabaret would define both of their careers. Even after filming ended, their friendship didn't. Years later, would sing backup for her during concerts and late-night shows. He was there for her during her struggles, the marriages, the addictions, always in her corner, just like she was in his during the early days. Just a year later, York completely switched gears. From Berlin cafes to the dusty roads of France, he transformed into the fearless, fast-talking D'Artagnan in The Three Musketeers. The film came out in December 1973, and York was suddenly an action hero. Same budget as Cabaret, but this time with swords, duels, and horse chases. He played a young man from the countryside with big dreams, clashing with seasoned musketeers, and slowly earning their respect. Critics praised him for bringing both charm and fire to the role. It was a bold, physical performance, filled with energy and swagger. The film was originally planned for the Beatles, yes, that Beatles, but ended up being York's moment instead. He trained hard, fought hard, and smiled through every bit of it. Just like that, he had range, from quiet professor to swashbuckling fighter. Then in 1974, York joined one of the most glamorous casts in film history. Murder on the Orient Express wasn't just a movie, it was an event. Directed by Sidney Lumet and packed with legends like Albert Finney, Lauren Bacall, Sean Connery, and Ingrid Bergman, the film brought York into a new spotlight. He played Count Androny, a Hungarian diplomat hiding a dark secret about his wife. Unlike his fiery role in The Three Musketeers, here he was, polished, calm, protective. But even in this quiet role, he had moments of heat. In one scene, Poirot questions his wife about a sleeping drug, and York's character snaps to her defense, ready to fight anyone who dares accuse her. The film made nearly $38 million and proved again that York could do it all. Be soft, be bold, be dangerous, be kind. Michael York's journey through the mid-1970s was anything but quiet. In 1975, he stepped into the role of a British officer stationed in colonial India for the film Conduct Unbecoming. He played Lieutenant Arthur Drake, a young optimistic man who slowly finds himself wrapped in a dark scandal. At first, he's just there to help defend another officer in a secret, unofficial trial. But the deeper he digs, the more twisted things get. What starts as a formality turns into a personal mission for justice. As Drake uncovers disturbing secrets buried in the regiment, York's performance grows more intense. He transforms from naive newcomer to a man risking everything to do what's right. Just 1 year later, York made a sharp turn from period drama to the far future. In 1976, he became Logan 5 in Logan's Run, a futuristic enforcer in a society where no one is allowed to live past the age of 30. His job was to hunt down runners. People trying to escape their fate. But when Logan's own life clock is tampered with, he starts asking questions. The world he thought was perfect begins to fall apart. Alongside Jessica 6, he runs for freedom, dodging death and discovering that life outside the dome is real. The story ends with Logan returning to expose the truth, and the system collapses. It was a defining role for York. One that made him a science fiction legend. Behind the scenes, he pushed boundaries too. In one iconic scene, Logan is interrogated by a computer that splits his mind into holograms. York became the first actor ever filmed in holographic form. He had to perform as 7 versions of himself in a single scene. It was strange, technical, and groundbreaking. While some thought he did his own stunts in the famous ice cave scene, it was really his holographic work that made headlines. The film's effects earned an Academy Award and set a new standard for sci-fi visuals. Then, in 1977, York took on something entirely different. He reunited with Franco Zeffirelli to play John the Baptist in the miniseries Jesus of Nazareth. It aired across multiple countries and became a global TV event. His fiery, intense performance stood out, especially during the moment where he baptizes Jesus and declares him the Son of God. The show became a classic, watched by millions, and York's role gave the story a sense of urgency and conviction that stuck with viewers. Before all of this, in 1974, York had already taken on the beloved character, Pip. In Great Expectations, the film had a star-studded British cast and brought Dickens's story to life with rich visuals and a bold twist, casting the same actress as both young and older Estella. Critics debated the choice, but York's emotional performance held it all together. His version of Pip felt real, unsure, hurt, ambitious, and hopeful all at once. As the 1980s rolled in, York shifted to television. In 1986, he earned his first Emmy nomination for a touching role in an ABC after-school special called Are You My Mother? It was a deep, emotional performance in a show meant for young audiences, but York didn't hold back. He spent weeks preparing, watching real parent-child interactions to get it right. After a few tough years on stage, this role reminded audiences that York could do more than period pieces or epics. It marked the start of his second act. A year later, in 1987, York showed up on American primetime TV in Knots Landing. He played Charles Scott, a suave, manipulative businessman who gets tangled up in a love affair that turns explosive. The role was different from what fans expected, and that was the point. It gave York a chance to explore darker, messier characters. Ratings went up, and audiences responded to the charm he brought to a villain. Throughout the 1990s, York made his mark in science fiction television. In 1995, he played a mysterious diplomat in Babylon 5, winning an award for Best Guest Actor. He returned to the show twice and took on other sci-fi roles too. Like a rogue scientist in Sliders and an alien investigator in a cult Showtime film. He appeared in at least 7 sci-fi TV movies during this time, adding depth to characters who were often morally complicated or emotionally torn. Producers loved his voice and presence. He brought weight to even the wildest plots. In 2001, he was nominated for his second Emmy. This time, it was for The Lot, a drama set in the 1930s Hollywood. York played a studio boss, powerful, charming, ruthless. He did deep research, spoke with real old-school executives, and studied films from the time. His effort paid off. Critics loved it. Audiences did too. And York proved again that he could lead a show with subtlety and strength. But nothing reshaped his career quite like a strange little comedy that landed on his desk in 1996. It was called Austin Powers. At first, York wasn't sure. He read the script 3 times and still didn't know if he should take it. It was goofy, loud, and totally different from anything he'd done before. His agent even warned against it, but something about it stuck with him. Eventually, he said yes. On set, York embraced improvisation, even though it was a new world for him. He added lines, shaped his character, and helped turn Basil exposition into more than just a walking punchline. His scenes were funny, yes, but also sharp and memorable. When the film hit theaters in 1997, it was a surprise success. But when it hit home video, it exploded. The sequels came fast. The Spy Who Shagged Me in 1999 made over $300 million. Goldmember, in 2002, made nearly the same. Suddenly, teens were quoting York's lines. He was being invited to Comic-Con. His fan base grew overnight, and most of them had no idea he'd once played Shakespeare. Between 1996 and 2002, York's fan mail tripled. 70% came from people under 25. It was the kind of comeback most actors can only dream about. He had gone from British theatre to science fiction icon, from soap opera villain to Emmy-nominated TV star, and finally to comedy legend, all without losing the core of what made him great. A deep commitment to every role he played. Then there is his love life. It all started in 1967, when Michael York was expecting a photographer named Pat McCallum to show up for a photo shoot. He thought he'd be meeting an Irish guy. But when he opened the door, he was greeted by a blonde American woman with no visible camera bag. Thinking it was an interview, York invited her in for tea. They talked and laughed. And finally, he asked, "Aren't you going to ask me any questions?" She looked confused and said, "No." That's when it hit him. This was the photographer. From that awkward but charming moment, something clicked. York would later say, "It was like we'd been together in another life." In a matter of months, he knew she was the one. On his 26th birthday, March 27, 1968, he married Patricia at Kensington Register Office in London. Just weeks earlier, he had proposed to her on Juhu Beach in Mumbai on Valentine's Day. It was romantic, almost too romantic, and he later joked, "How corny can you get?" But their love was real. Right after the proposal, things took a terrifying turn. Patricia got violently sick while they were staying at a Maharaja's palace. Her condition worsened fast, and her life was hanging by a thread. Only a visiting surgeon saved her. York had to carry her back to England. That experience bonded them for life. Along with love, York also became a stepfather. Patricia had a son from a previous marriage, Rick McCallum, born in 1954 in Germany. Rick's father was a United States Air Force pilot. Over time, Rick would grow up to be one of Hollywood's most powerful producers, best known for producing the Star Wars prequels. He also worked on the Young Indiana Jones Chronicles and collaborated closely with George Lucas. While York built a career in front of the camera, Rick made waves behind it. And through it all, their bond stayed strong. In 1976, York and Patricia bought a house in the Hollywood Hills for $260,000. It sat above the Sunset Strip and looked like a mini French chateau. With 4,200 square feet, a fireplace made of Texas limestone, a library, and a wraparound deck beside a mosaic-tiled pool, it was their sanctuary. For over 45 years, they lived there. In 2022, they finally sold it for $7 million. But it wasn't about the money. York's health had taken a sharp turn. In 2013, he was diagnosed with amyloidosis, a rare disease that had been misdiagnosed as bone cancer. They moved to Rochester, Minnesota to be near the Mayo Clinic. Patricia called it the place that saved his life. The first sign came in 2008. While filming a miniseries, York noticed dark rings under his eyes. At first, he thought it was fatigue. He tried covering it with makeup, but the rings got darker and more permanent. Something was wrong. Doctors said it was multiple myeloma, a type of cancer. That wasn't it. For years, they chased the wrong illness. Meanwhile, York's condition got worse. His voice started to fail. For an actor, losing his voice was unthinkable. "I lost my voice completely," he said. It wasn't just the voice. He was tired all the time, too exhausted to work. His wife didn't stop searching. She found Dr. Robert Kyle at the Mayo Clinic, a hematologist who finally gave them the real diagnosis, AL amyloidosis. The disease was attacking his organs. His face had changed. His signature raccoon eyes were actually caused by protein deposits. He began wearing sunglasses in public to hide the swelling. Fans were shocked by his appearance. This was the same actor who had starred in Cabaret and Logan's Run. But now, he looked like a different man. In 2012, York made a life-changing choice. At age 70, he underwent a stem cell transplant at the Mayo Clinic. The procedure involved chemotherapy, which caused him to lose his hair, but it worked. The transplant was successful, and York started calling that day his second birthday. He had a new immune system and a second chance. After years of pain, he turned his battle into a mission. In 2014, he launched Renewal, an initiative to raise awareness and funds for amyloidosis research. He spoke at medical events, narrated educational videos, and gave a powerful speech at the National Press Club in 2016, calling amyloidosis the Rodney Dangerfield of diseases. It gets no respect. He wasn't just an actor anymore. He was an advocate. In 2022, the Yorks sold their longtime Hollywood home and much of their art collection. They moved to a senior community in Rochester just minutes from the Mayo Clinic. It wasn't glamorous, but it was safe. Patricia said they didn't regret it. They explored local museums, wrote books, and found peace in their new life. She kept writing. He lent his voice to film projects when he could. He even voiced a character in The Simpsons, something that delighted his grandchildren.